Welcome to the Take 92 podcast. My name is Sammy Warmhands. I am your host. And for the last 10 years, we've been doing this. I started the show in 2015 just as a way to interview my friends, and I hoped to get to 10 episodes. I thought that would be a great start. And here we are. It's episode 109, 10 years later, and it's time to say goodbye. I started this just for fun. I always liked going to do radio interviews. You know, when my band had a record coming out, the local radio stations would have us on, and I thought that stuff was really fun. And a couple times I got invited to do other people's podcasts and talk about my work, and I thought that was really, really cool. And so I brought on my friend Crosby, and we just did this kind of unscripted two-part conversation about music, just kind of no parameters, and it was really fun. And I decided to bring on other friends of mine and have more formal interviews, and that started going really well. And gradually that turned into, well, maybe I ask these people that, you know, I've opened for them. You know, we're kind of we're friendly, we're acquaintances, you know, and that worked out great, and I started getting some more recognizable names and people I'd listened to for a long time. And what happened there was really cool because I have listened to so many of these artists for so many years that I had a lot of knowledge about their back catalog. And I could ask them very specific questions that nobody really gets asked. And on top of that, these are people that are very admired, but also not like famous enough to be interviewed and been asked the same questions a lot anyway. So I think people were eager to share their stories. And as that continued to evolve, you know, wound up getting some absolute legends on the show. And I don't say that to diminish any of my friends and other guests that we had, because I genuinely felt like I got to know people that I have been playing shows with for years in a way that I never could have just hanging out in that environment, right? Because at a show, you're not going to have an hour and a half conversation, you know, about your origins and you know, who gave you that first rap tape and whatever that is for you, you know, when you got your first guitar and started your first band. Like a lot of those things I got to learn just from doing the show, and got to know even my own friends a lot better. And the show has been very, very cool, but it was also very, very difficult, because the most important thing when you're doing a podcast is to keep it consistent and to drop on a regular basis and try to keep your schedule. And when you are a guest interview show, it's very difficult to produce that, because you might have 6 people that said, yes, I'd love to do it. And you're trying to schedule each of them. And, you know, it just becomes a nightmare, especially when I'm doing it myself. You know, doing the research, because yes, I go back through the back catalog and, you know, come up with what I want to discuss, even though I leave it sort of open-ended for the show. But, you know, again, the scheduling, the editing, as time went on, the show got more and more refined, and that carried over to my other show, the Bat Fanatic podcast, in 2019. And I continued to get more and more tight with my edits, so I might spend 8 to 10 hours on one episode just cutting out all the tiny little stuff, all the little bullshit, and make it feel like, just because my background as a music producer, make it feel like a, you know, produced and well-paced piece of entertainment, and not just some free-form conversation that, you know, meanders a bit, and maybe some people have to listen to at 1.5 speed or something because it doesn't keep up the pace. And so that was something very important to me as well, and it became very time-consuming to try to schedule all these people and then have to do all the editing and get it done by certain deadlines. And so I would take breaks, like, okay, that's the end of a season, quote unquote, and then I would do a bunch of interviews and edit all those episodes. And then a few months later, okay, cool. Now I've got, if I'm dropping every other week, I've got like 4 interviews. That's 2 months of content ready to go. It's uploaded. Cool. Now I'm not in a rush. But it doesn't take long before you get behind again, because again, you're waiting on people who are about to go on tour, or they're releasing a new album and they can't talk about it just yet because it's got to be lined up with the first video or whatever it is. And so it just became more difficult than it was rewarding. And I felt like I had achieved so much more than I ever imagined with the show that I'm like, dude, quit while you're ahead. There's no point in doing it if you're not enjoying it. And I was already doing 2 podcasts at once at that point. And so the Batman show, we had the same co-hosts every time. We had no guests. All we had to do was read a book or watch a movie and take those notes. And again, the post-production takes forever, but it wasn't the same sort of nightmare as the other one. In fact, we would actually get together in one day and record 2 episodes back to back. So we would just have 1 month's worth of content just by meeting once a month. And it was great. So that is kind of where I landed. And I would come back to this show, and whenever I had a new record coming out, I might get the band together and we would talk about it and play you some of the tracks. And I thought that was a cool way to go behind the curtain, because I'm not big enough that people usually invite me to be on their podcasts. And I love doing that. You know, I love being a guest and having people interested in my work, and I get to talk about the process. And I think that's super fun. And so, you know, when I'm doing the interviews on the Take 92 podcast, I tried to ask questions that would be exciting for me as the artist to talk about, right? And so I think that shit's really cool. But what it ended up becoming was I would come back for a new record, and then, you know, 6 months later, I would come back and do my annual top 10 albums of the year and all the honorable mentions. And those are fun conversations. I like doing them. Conversations, they're monologues. But surprisingly, people listen to my monologues all these years. And I think that is really cool. And I was always very happy to hear when people would DM me and be like, hey, you're going to do another one of those? Because I always like listening to those. Or, hey, I found a new band because you talked about that. Or, you know, oh, I got into that record because you put it on your podcast. And that shit's super cool to me, because, you know, how'd we all discover our favorite bands? A lot of them was just from a friend's house, you know, like they were playing it over there, or somebody told you, oh, you got to check out, you like that band? Oh, you got to check out this band. You go to the record store and pick it up. And so, you know, a lot of the stuff we're into is very word of mouth driven. And so I think it's cool just to be part of that and pay that forward. But, you know, it's kind of just been this 1 or 2 episodes a year for a while now. And with this 10-year anniversary, it just seems that it's time to move on. So I just want to thank you guys for checking out the show. It's crazy that when I pull up my Libsyn account, the distribution page, to upload new Bat Fanatic episodes, sometimes I'll glance at Take 92 and I'm like, wow, people are still listening to these old episodes. That's really cool to see. And so thank you guys, whether you used to listen or, you know, you're just finding the show now. I'm really grateful, and I think there's a really cool body of work here, and maybe at some point I'll go back and revisit it. But for now, I just wanted to let you guys know, in case you didn't see the Instagram post, that this is it. You can follow me at Sammy Warmhands or at BatFanAddict on Instagram for my regular content. But yeah, we're going to wrap up the Take 92 podcast. So thank you guys. No outro theme. We're just signing off for 2025. Thank you.